Right, we're live today. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you join. Okay, let's see. Comment. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, here with me, as you all know, I've been on the session several times. My name is Alfred Smith. I have our super senior coach Kat is joining us today, and we just want to welcome you guys. And today we're here to share some knowledge with you with regarding estimation. So we're both gonna have a just a conversation about what estimation is and how it differs from environment to environment. And please feel free to ask your questions. We're here as always to do the best we can to support and answer your questions. So, welcome. We have someone joining us from California. Welcome to my home state of California. Kat, you want to take a little bit time and introduce yourself?
Um, sure, thank you. I'm unable to see the chat though. I don't know why. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So, it's another great opportunity for us to come here to share our knowledge and to answer some of your questions and to also learn as well. So, feel free to ask your questions. So, today we'll be talking on estimation, agile estimation. So, chime in and just follow us on the chat with you could add whatever you want to add, and if you have any questions please go ahead and drop on the chat.
So let's get it going. So, Kat, what would you say estimation? What is estimation based on your experience as an agile practitioner? So, what would you say estimation is?
All right, thank you. So estimation is basically us, the team, looking at the effort that will be needed to work on a requirement or let's say a story. So, and this effort is based on, so when looking at the effort, we're also looking at the like the complexity of the story, the risk involved in that story. So we're taking into account complexity, risk, and effort that will need to work on a story. And I feel like we do this every day, even in our everyday lives. Let's say you're getting married and you're trying to make maybe clothes for your bridesmaids, and you go to a tailor and you always ask, okay, how long is it going to take you to get my clothes done? And they'll tell you, if it's a simple style, they'll tell you, okay, call me in 3 days, because they'll take into consideration maybe their time that they need to go to the store to get the fabrics and everything they need, and then to the factor all of that, the risks, maybe they might go to give you a clothes for zigzag and the person doesn't, it's not available, so they take into consideration their effort, the risk, and all uncertainties. Is the same thing in an agile environment. So we do this every day. So that's basically what estimation is all
Yeah,
about.
just to add on to it, I mean, the term itself is coin estimation. So it's not an absolute, but you're basically just given it's kind of like a gauge to say, okay, this thing is gonna take me, it's not definitive or based on your experience. So like you indicated, it based on what the uncertainty, the complexity, some environment may differ when you talk about estimation. You may look at not just the complexities, it has the dependencies and any uncontrollable fact. The way we've been doing it lately, so the team in our environment, the team is basically sometimes we do present a roadmap, right? We have the stakeholders joining us in, and so we build part of building a new system within an existing system. So they kind of show the map of the older system. So we modify it, like their roadmap or the path basically of what the from end to end what the feature looks like. So it gives them a better understanding of better understanding of what they're getting into, what the requirement is asking for, right? And so this has really helped them. We had a retro yesterday, and that's something they mentioned as well. They would like to have more of that. So estimation to certain, depending on the environment, it's not just about a good user story, acceptance criteria, complexity. So it varies from environment to environment.
Yep, and again with agile there are two types. We have like the like at the team level when we're talking about storyboard and estimation. We also know there are two types. You have the absolute, which is in hours, and then we have the relative, which is story point estimation. And in most environments that I've worked in, they we go with the story point estimation, which is relative. It's not absolute like the hours.
Yeah,
And
I have been in an environment where we actually use ours, and you're gonna see to a certain extent, not every, but depending on what you the team is working on. But in my environment, in the previous environments, like a government environment, you do what that does for budgeting purpose. Like they want to know exactly how when you want to do cost, how much of this, you know, they budget and how much are they spending on certain projects. So well, we're doing that in hours, right? So which to me at first, I it's not something I was really keen on, but again, that's how they were doing it in the environment. And so one of the thing I recommended was, can we do this in Storypoint? And shortly before I left, that was one of the implementation I was doing. Unfortunately, I wasn't there to see it become fruitful, but yeah, that was one of my recommendations for them to try do story pointing estimation as opposed to hours to kind of see a difference if it's gonna, which it was gonna help them, but I didn't get to see it fruitful. So yeah, you do have a lot of environment that do that. So it's more from a financial standpoint to a certain extent is why most of them are doing hours. They estimated in hours. Anything else you would like to add?
yeah, and yes, I feel like we cannot talk about estimation without talking about capacity because estimation also helps teams to know many story points to take into a sprint, and this is they also use the capacity as a guide to know how much work they can pick into a sprint. And estimation is also one of the things that goes into a story being ready for its sprint because a story needs to be estimated for a team to know that okay, we have to move this into the sprint. So I feel like we cannot talk about estimation without talking about capacity, which is basically the availability of the team members, taking into consideration the PTOs, sick leave, and all of that. So how many hours or how many days of the sprint are they available? So that also helps as a guide for us, the teams, to know how much work we're taking into the sprint. Because if we have 10 working days and a team member is out for 2 days, that's already an indication that, okay, if we had to pick up 5 stories, we might end up picking up 4 stories because we already have less capacity. And again, because you need to also take into consideration the fact that we might have new requirements coming in or bugs and all of that. So it also helps as a guide for us
Yeah,
to
I
know when
mean,
to take into the
I
sprint.
think it's very important. It's very important and critical to factor in the capacity, just like you mentioned, because you cannot just estimate and basically without bringing in your capacity. It kind of have to align with what you're taking and what you have. Or we say, what's the load that we're gonna take, right? We must have the capacity to be able to take as much work as we can as a team, right? And it can be in terms of delivering the business value. So yeah, I mean, there's so many forms of estimation you can, the t-shirt size, and with this, we probably won't go into that. It's a lot more, which basically happens more at the portfolio level, right? When you talk about epic capability, that's what for
Mhm.
most part that's what it's used. So what are some of the tools do you think within your environment, or I should per your experience, that is being utilized for estimation?
Oh, like the techniques. Oh, yeah. So, like in my previous environment, we use planning poker.
Oh, okay, yeah,
So,
we
and
want
we
to. give them a little brief of what planning poker is? It's
So, sure. So with planning poker, we're utilizing the Fibonacci sequence. And please don't ask me why the sequence is the way it is, because we have one. So with the sequence, when you add the first two numbers, it gives you the next. So we have one, we have two, we have one, and then we have two, we have three, 5, 8, 13, and 21. But for my team, especially my recent, my present teams, we estimate during our planning or refinement when we do our estimations, we don't estimate stories above 5 story points. We feel like if we have an eight story into the if we move an eight story into the sprint, we'll not be able to finish that. We'll need to break it to the bare minimum of 5. But there have been cases where it was a 13 point and it's a little complicated because I don't talk about the bird. There was a case where we had a 13 story point for the sprint and we had our reasons for that. But it's advisable for teams to estimate at max should be 5. And if you want, okay, I think people will ask, okay, what does the number indicate? So for a 1 story point, it means, okay, the requirement is very clear and simple, and maybe we've even worked on something like this in the past. And then for two, it's also it's the requirement is for one it's very clear, and for two the requirement is clear, it's easy to be worked on, and then for three the requirement is also clear but it might need like little clarifications, and then for five the requirement is clear but it might need maybe a little clarification maybe from team members or from somebody outside the team. That's when we'll give it a 5. And then with an 8 it means the maybe the technological approach is a little um different or difficult, so the team members need to do maybe brainstorming sessions or need to reach out to external teams to have a clue. And then for 8 the approach is not clear at all, and most time for us for 8 and 13 the approach is not really clear. Like for us, most times in the sprint we always have a spike story in the ready column. So in case we'll have stories like this, what we'll do is when we do our research, team members go in and factor in their time on the spike story. And then for 21, it means it's super complex and there are many unknowns and even dependencies and a lot of risk. Where we've never had that situation where we story point story 21.
Yeah, I think it's always advisable. I mean, within one of the boundaries that we set is like anything that reach 13, not even beyond 13. It's about efficiency. The goal of the team is to break it down to as small as possible.
Hmm.
If it has to take us to go 2 or 3 sprint, it's fine. So that
Hmm.
one thing we set a standard. Anything that as soon as the team agreed is 13, then right
Hmm.
there we have to break it down, right? So
Yes.
it kind of makes the teams more efficient. Yeah, so with regard to the tools, I mean, there are various tools out there. When again, we're saying this stuff because we've been in the environment, so we do have some understanding of how a good knowledge of how this process works. But it is mainly done by the development team or by your team.
Hmm.
It's also essential to understand that when we talk about estimation, it's not just the development team. When we say development team, it's not just people that are actually you call it developers and stuff. So it's anybody, I will say it's anyone who add to the value that is being delivered, right?
Hmm.
So a BA, you have a business analyst, a tester, if that BA is doing a tester, which I've been in the position. So that also factor into estimation, right? How long is it gonna take them to test this code or product that is being built and factor into the estimation. So let's just to point that out there when we talk, it's not just about the development, but it's also the testing
Hmm.
and whatever way it's done in the environment. So that factored in as well in terms of the estimation. I see. Correct me if I'm wrong. There was a suggestion. Mambo mentioned, yeah, they use owls too. Again, yeah.
Oh.
So owls is used more so it's more so related to budget, right? It helps. This is where you kind of have core project management kicks in, but we're not gonna go into that detail. But yes, it helps management more in terms of budget wise, which even though I think which is the beauty of agile as well, because it's flexible, right? It's flexible.
Mm-hmm.
What that does, it helps management become more flexible in terms of budgeting when it comes to project or whatever teams they're building. Oh, we have Coachella just joined us.
Welcome, Coach
Welcome.
Eller.
Hello, hello everyone. It's
So
nice to bust in the middle of the meeting. So
I know.
thank you all for having me.
Thank you for joining. And like I know everyone will be wondering, oh, why do they story point that? Why should story points be limited to maybe a 1, a 3, or a 5? Remember, a sprint is 10 working days. Factor in those meetings and all, like meetings, like the Scrum meetings, and then testers have their own meetings, developers have their own meetings. So if you factor all that out, if you factor the time into the 10 days, it's already maybe 8 or 7 days. So taking we need to break stories into the bare minimum so that we're able to finish it during the sprint, the course of the sprint, which is mostly 10 working days. So that's why it's always advisable for you to work with your teams to break stories, maybe 3, max 5 story points.
Yes. So we have a question. Sonny asks, what advice or approach would you take when you notice a five-story point or three-story point is still in development stage for 3 days before? So will you clear, is it before or during the sprint? So let's say probably during the sprint. So any advice, Coach Cat and Coachella, when a story, a five or three-story point is still in development. Oh, it's still in development before, okay, before the sprint ends. So let's kind of say, hypothetically speaking, it's, yeah,
Three
three
days
days
to the
and
end
a
of the
10 day
sprint.
sprint. Yeah. So before the end of the sprint. So what advice would you give Sony, or what approach would you say it's best for him to basically handle that situation with his team?
Kachala, do you want to take the question or want me to go?
So the 5 story pointer, what level is it at the sprint is one thing we have to consider. Again, there are different ways that you can handle that. One of which I love the most is swarming. I love the concept of swarming. Can we swarm and get that done? Because a lot of times you have a developer having a 5 story pointer and is still struggling with that user story, and you have other team members who have completed their work and they are focused on pulling in more stories into the sprint. How about we stop starting and start finishing? So stop starting new work and then we can swarm to get that done. Because the thing is, if we do not complete, it's not going to be a team member didn't complete, it's going to be the team. So it's always very important to make the team understand that it's team effort. They rate us as a team, not individually. We do not meet the goal. The team did not meet the sprint goal. So it's not going to be an individual team member not meeting the sprint goal. So swarming is one of the ways that I will encourage. However, of course, we'll have instances where we can only spill over, right? There are some times that there's nothing we can do, but the goal is we learn from that moving forward. What was the reason why we couldn't move it to done? Um, in my environment, most of the time, what we do is we have what we call time box for stories. So the concept of time box for user stories is we go by the story points and we agree as a team that on a certain day that story should be available for the testers to test,
Yeah.
right? So we have 10 days.
Mhm.
How many days does it take the developers to do a 1 story pointer, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5? But overall, it shouldn't get to the testers anytime later than 2 to 3 days to the end of the sprint. Because if that happens, they might not be able to test, right? So before we even get to the end of the sprint, you're having your updates. You should be able to identify bottlenecks and see how the story is moving. But swarming is the best way that I've gone about, moving the stories to done before the end of the sprint. Let's swarm and get it done.
Yeah,
Thank
Kat,
you.
anything you want to add to it?
Yeah, just like Coach Ella said, for us, we came to an agreement that developers should take 10, since it's a 10-day sprint, developers should take 5 days to make sure they work on on their stories. And while they're doing that, the testers are preparing their test cases on Jira and getting all the stuff done so that immediately the developers finish and they tell the testers, oh, this config is already in UAT because that's how we do our testing. So they are able to pick it up immediately and start working on it. So that was an agreement that we came up with from the start, like 5 days for development work, 5 days for testing. So we have been, but it's been going pretty well. So like Coachella said, that's what we've been doing in our environment and it's working. So you might want to introduce this and swam into them. But again, during stand up, you need to pick that real quick during stand up. Like if it's a 10 day sprint and the first 7 days, you must have realized like, at max 3 days. If I see a story they give me the same update for the first 3 days in the sprint. I know there's an issue, and I don't bring it up during meetings. After I stand up, I'm always reach out to them. Okay, is there a problem? Do you need support? Is there anything you need from another team member? So you always need to pick that real quick so that it doesn't get to the end of the sprint and then like 3 days to the end of the sprint and then the story is still in the development column. So just be proactive to pick that real quick and then look for a solution for the team member.
Yeah, that thanks for that. That's a really good one, Sonia. You picked it up. I actually kind of had something similar. So my Scrum Master is new. She's kind of, so the BA is pretty much acting in in the capacity, but since I'm there, pretty much to say the most, I won't say knowledge, but I'm there tracking everything. So it's a little complex that um for one of the stories, she actually completed it on the very last day of the sprint, which was yesterday, right? But I think what helped was there was clarity that needs to be. So it may not just be sitting there. There's several factors, just like has been mentioned. But the way things work, because we have our stakeholders, most of them within our DSU, that helps provide that clarity. So it doesn't mean we spend the entire time at the DSU. Our DSU doesn't even last 2 minutes. So we utilize the additional time where we use the office hours. That's where we go. They provide more clarity and it was able to help the developers. So pay more close attention to your board every day, and not just the board, also what the developers are saying. You want to be keen in what they're saying, not coming. They're telling you consistently the same thing for that 3 days, then there's a problem. It's key you pay attention to what they're saying. That will help you understand there's something going on. That that's why it's staying in the
Mhm.
board for that long. So we have another question. How can a team that is yet to be mature do their proper estimation? Good cat.
Um, oh,
Okay.
okay. Thank you. So for me, what I did with my new team, I had like a sheet that had and it's on our conference page that has like the reason for one story point two 3 5 8 13 21 and the reason. So it has the story point, the effort needed, and the reason. So we have that. So what I did was at the beginning of our estimation, I'll share my screen. We go over that for like 10 for like 3 minutes and then I'm like, okay, is everyone comfortable? They'll be like, yes, we read through. Okay, then we go ahead and do our estimation. And I always give room for questioning, like, okay, this person gave a five, this person gave a three. All right, what's your reason for giving a five? What's your reason for giving a three? And they will have this conversation and they'll come to a consensus. Most times they'll be like, okay, it's a five story because we need to do automation. It takes time to write automation scripts before passing the script. So you already know, and the other team members will be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's true. I didn't know that. I didn't notice you needed to write automation script for this story. So that's what I did, and it's been working for us because I started doing this because when we started, a team member doing estimation, a team member gave a four. I was like, oh, this story a four. So okay, I'm like, oh, okay. Thank you, Gajem. I see that you made a little mistake. So I decided to do this. We did it for like 6 months. And now I feel like when I feel like okay, everybody's comfortable, I stopped doing it. So you can also do this with your team just to make sure they know the story points, the effort needed, and the reason. I think this is going to be a good guide for the team to estimate properly. And
Yeah.
always don't just accept a story point. Or if somebody gives a 5 and another person gives a 3, ask them questions like, okay, why did you give this? So you have the team has a conversation before coming to a consensus. Don't just go with the majority and then shun down the person that gave maybe a higher number. Because at the end of the day, we don't even know who is going to pick what story. So that's why it's best for the team members to all be comfortable with the story point. Because what if I say a 5, they give it a 3, and then I'm the one that picks that story, and I don't finish it at the end of the sprint. There's a spillover. So it's always good to have that conversation before coming to a consensus as a team. So if yes, just use this guide. I'm sure it's gonna help the team. I'm very sure.
Just to add real quick to what Coach Kate said. So we all know estimation. We are looking at the risks. We are looking at the complexity. We are looking at the uncertainty. Then the question will be, what is the complexity, right? So for my teams, what we do is we look at the different steps that we take to move a user story from start to finish. And we have things like how many test cases does the tester have to run for a particular user story, right? So it's a team effort. We did that. And then developers will be like, okay, let's look at something that we need to do just a little bit of code change. And maybe no manual testing is required, it's automated. Let's call that a 1. So the best thing is to look for a reference point. Now, there's a reason why it is called relative estimation. So you're estimating the others relative to something else. So what is the reference point for the team? It's okay for the team to have up to 2 reference points. Maybe reference point is 1 story point, and we use that for story points of 2 and 3. We reference it as opposed to the 1 story point. Then we can have another reference point for 5, and we use the bigger stories to reference that. Now, again, we are looking at how much effort is required for a 1 story point. And then we are looking at other work that we have to do in related to this 1 story point. How much more is needed? And then we tilt the estimation, right? So for my team, what we did is we actually break it down. When there's a lot of code changes to be done, you have up to 10 test cases to be done for a user story. How long does it take the testers to do the test cases, right? So that is how we break. It's a team effort. And the tester says, oh, it takes us about 2 days to run 10 test
Mm-hmm.
cases.
Yeah.
Developers, how long does it take to do like a complex code change? Oh, it takes us about 5 to these days. Then, given the number of days in total, we say, okay, let's put this a 5 story pointer, or let's reference this an 8 story pointer. Again, we always go back to revise,
Mm.
right? Because the truth is, with time, complexity reduces. If I
Yes.
do something over and over and over again, I become used to that piece of work,
Mhm.
right? So it's no more
Yeah.
complex to me because I know the procedure. So over time, we've had 5 story pointers drop down to what 3 story pointers over time, because now we understand what we expect. We understand the risks that we can encounter, and there's no much uncertainty. So it's always good to revise that, but then it's good to have the team come together to discuss the complexity part of the story estimate when taking it into consideration.
All right, thank you, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, just in addition to everything that says, you can also incorporate training as well. If there needs to be clarity, you can do training where you teach them what is estimation, what's the purpose of doing estimation, and why or what the benefit of estimation is with regards to, again, it all depends on what they're building, but a training that you can also add into it.
Mhm.
So, Olu got a question saying, Olu, towards your question, when we say it finishes in 5 days, doesn't mean when they finish, they sit there not doing nothing. Okay. There's always a backlog ready.
Yeah.
So when we finish up, we're not finish our PI. During our PI, the PI planning day one, we had my team guide them, which your PO was over the moon for that anyway. But so we had for the entire PI planned out. We had story built for the entire PI. So what we're saying is you have to have a really well prepared, or as we usually say, a healthy backlog, right? Once you have a healthy backlog, when they finish, they can go and pull another story story they can ticket it with, they can pull and work on. It doesn't mean they sit there and not do nothing while the testing is going on. So it's an ongoing thing. We may
Mhm.
be say we committed to 30, right? We're finishing all 30 before the 2 weeks. We go back to our backlog and bring in more items. That's
Mhm.
basically what we're saying.
Yep.
Sarah said my
That's
team.
why it's always advisable to refine your backlog to be sprint deep.
Yeah, exactly. So that's your role as a scrum master in, I would say, in relation, work with your PO to ensure that you have a well prepared backlog, 2 3 sprint, for whichever way you want to have it deep. So that helps, again, it helps your team become more productive, right? That will save them from finishing their work and sitting down, because it becomes a concern for management and they have access to your board. Don't think they don't have access to your board. See when something is completed and what's not, right? So be mindful of that. We got another one where Sarah.
Coach Alfred, just to add real quick on adding more work, for us, we call it stretch goals. Our goal is what we commit to at the beginning of the sprint. But if we get that finished, we have what we call stretch goals. So we are stretching above that initial goal because we have been able to get that done. We pull that in the sprint, and we do that because normally your report is going to pick what you commit to from the start of the sprint.
Yep.
So if we commit to, let's say, 15 user story points, and we are done with the 15 and we pull in 5 more, even if we spill over the 5 more, it's not going to reflect on our report. Our report
No.
is still going to say we committed to 15 and we delivered 15. So our committed versus our delivered is still going to be the same. So which is why we only pull the stretch goals after we start the sprint. Because if we
Mhm.
pull in the stretch goal before we start the sprint, is going to affect the reports. So, but it depends. Some teams will prefer to start working on it on the backlog and start a new clean slate. You have some teams say, oh, we want to start our spring on a clean slate. We don't want to spill over story. It's still okay, right? However, the team plays with it. But again, when we are done, there's always room to start something new. You can either pull it in or start
Yep.
working from the backlog, because the Jura board is not where the work is done. It's just where we display how the work is flowing.
Visualize,
Right? Because
yes.
I know there are people that are new to Scrum, and some people would think like, oh, the Jura board is not where they do the work. They do it in a
Mm-mm.
different environment, but we just display. So you can always start it when it's still at the backlog. And then when we start a new spring, you pull it in if the team wants to start the spring on a clean slate.
Yep. Thank you.
And
Coach Al, so just I'm laughing because Coach Al, I remember when a new Scrum Master reached out to us and she was like, "Oh, I can't see my velocity chart." Mind you, she led her team to move towards into the sprint before they did estimation. So they started moving the stories on the board before they did estimation. So that was so the way when she went to her velocity, it didn't read anything because they started the work before they did the estimation. So please make sure you have your stories estimated in the backlog before you put them to the ready column.
yep, yep. Thank you very much. It's Sarah, my team lead don't want the team to be doing so. You want to give us shed a little light. Why does your team lead? Because that is too
Doing what?
generic. That's so
Yes.
she's saying the team lead doesn't want the team to be estimating user story. Now, why? It's just a generic
So
question.
yeah,
Is
that's
why
it's
this?
fine. Like in my environment, I think we have. I don't think we have teams that don't estimate, but they are very high performing and they trust each other. That comes with a lot of trust. They don't estimate, but they get their work done. So yeah, I remember when I interviewed with them, I was like, we were having a conversation during the interview, and then they were like, I don't know what question it was, but I think it was on estimation. And then they were like, oh, but we actually have teams that don't estimate and they're doing well. I'm like, oh, okay. So what's the reason? Why don't they want you to estimate? And is there a high level of trust and commitment in the team? If that's the case, then have a conversation with the team, because it's not like a one man decision. It's best for you to have a conversation with the entire team, and if they decide to go that route, then that's fine. But you cannot just take from the from the tech lead, because if you take from the tech lead and you don't have the buy-in from the entire team, guess what? When management come and the team will be like, "Oh, we didn't have a buy-in, we didn't say yes," and even the tech lead will be like, "No, I didn't say this." So, do you have your proof? Did you document it? So, to me, I feel like have a conversation with your team and then come out with a team decision. Like why? And you should have a conversation with the tech lead and get his or her reason why they don't want the team to estimate, and they have that conversation with the team like, okay, team, what do we think about this? What does the team want? Go with what the team want, not what the tech lead wants, because it might throw you under the bus.
I think to add to that, Kate, Coach Kate, most of the time, to get these people buy-in is to show them the value of why we do that.
Yes.
Now, if I work with a team that doesn't estimate, questions I'll be asking them during retro, first of all, then we cannot track our reports, right?
Yep.
Most of the time, organizations evaluate teams across the organization. So we don't have any reports to show how do we improve, right? What is our measurement for improvement? Because we don't have any reports to show that, oh, this is where we're lacking, especially with the control chart. When you estimate, it tells you like, so I feel like, secondly, how do we match our commitment to our capacity? Right? We do not
Yeah.
estimate. We don't know if this is a 8 story pointer and somebody is about to pull that into the sprint when the person is going to be what, out of the sprint half of the week, right? Maybe they are available for 5 days. Now we don't know if this is an 8 story pointer or a 3 story pointer, a 2 story pointer that we are about to, allow this person pick. So how do we match your capacity to your load to ensure that you are not overburdened, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to
Yeah.
ensure that you're not overburdened. Let's estimate and make sure that we match the availability of the team to the load of work that the team is also planning to take, right? And also, the average velocity helps us a lot to guide the team as to their commitment. So, if we take out estimation for all of those, we do not have those measurements that we can, work the team by. And if we want to help the team improve, what is our measurement? How do we measure
Sure.
that progress? How do we measure the fact that we have been able to improve from our previous practices? So I will just try to sell what the value is. And from my experience, most of the time, developers don't really care about reports unless you give them the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
My team, they used to be like, oh, if we spill it over, we'll still get it done. So
Mhm.
during retro, I was like, oh, do you know that they evaluate the whole teams across the organization? So this is where we are at the organization because of our cycle time. And that was a waking call for them or a
Mm-hmm.
wake up call for them. So
Yeah.
sometimes you have to make them see the value of these things and why we should do it, not just as opposed to saying, oh, let's do what the team wants.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's something I had to work with my PO, no, sorry, my, yeah, the PO, what the Scrum Masters and stuff, because to add on to what you guys are saying, and Rosalind, what's the issues? Again, it's there's certain time, my previous one before the changes I helped implemented before I left. Tickets were just coming in, they pick it up and work on it. They get it done. But what's the trace? How do we know how we're performing? Right? How can you convince management? Because if they're looking at, okay, yeah, coming up, we got a budget for this, that. How do they know? Right? How much resources they're gonna need, right? We're gonna need additional team members. So it's not just about the matrix. There's also other factors that may come into it with not doing as now. There's certain things I think it may depend. Certain environment will not be like what Kat said. It not do estimation. Again, that's different. The level it's a high performing. They know exactly what they're doing. They get it. It also may depend. It varies on what they're working on. That's another key thing we got to pay attention to, right? It got to varies for what they're working on. So those are things that we got to pay attention to. Yeah, but with regard to that, again, it's you, the Scrum Master. This comes down to your knowledge, right? You have to be. Before going up to them to explain, you want to make sure you do a lot of research, do enough research, right? Your level of on you're not going in if you've done expert. You just can let them know the value, like Kuchara said, the value. What's the importance of estimation? You can maybe put up a presentation, give a scenario and say,
Yes,
okay,
you should.
hypothetically, you know, imagine we're doing this and management come and ask us, hey, how's the team going? How's this? How's the we can't provide answers for it. But if we do have something that allows to, monitor what we're doing, it kind of gives us a better gauge of how we're going. Where do we need to improve? So what maybe additional resources do we need that can make the team become more effective or and because their processes become more efficient. So there's several benefits to it. It all relies on you as a scrum master to be able to articulate the value. That comes down to your ability as a scrum master, right?
Mhm.
So we had questions. How did you get a team to agree on how many days dev have to develop? I brought this I brought this up to my team and they said that putting pressure on them, but our carryovers are too much now. Ooh.
Wow. So my team was new, so we did like agile workshop, came out at working agreements, definition of done, definition of ready, and we're just trying to set like ground rules for us to work with. So we just then I came up with that like okay, since it's all the teams in our product line, since it's a 2 week sprint, we're also going to adopt 2 week sprint. So it's best for the developers to use 5 days to develop and then testers. But most times it's like that. But there are times when the developers use 6 days. So I feel like it's just it's fair that each of them have like the same amount of time to get their work done, even though we know maybe development work might take it more time sometimes, but it's just fair for each team member to have the same amount of time. So we just had this conversation and then the team were like, okay, it makes sense. So and then we went with it and it's been helping us a lot. We rarely have spillovers because they already know they are aware. For me, I don't feel like that's pressure. I just feel like it helps them to be more committed because they know at the back of their mind that okay, I need to finish my work in 5 days, max 6 days, so testers can pick it up and finish on time.
Yes, coach, I want to add on to that before I wrap it up.
So coach, when you were reading the question, I didn't, the first part was breaking, so if you can.
Okay, it's basically saying how did you get your team to agree on how many days dev have to develop? And so Sonny basically brought this up to his team, and they said that put
Oh,
he's
pressure.
put or he or she's putting pressure on them, and now it's basically they have a lot of carryover.
So, and that's your point. This is the best time for you to sell it back to them. Like, okay, see, this is a perfect opportunity for you to show them, okay, we didn't
So
do this. Look at the consequences.
yeah, for me, I think all of this thing boils down to team effort because when we said hours, the QAs actually spoke up and said, we cannot just care about not spilling over because when the spill over, guess what? There's more work for the QA. So
Hmm.
there's more pressure on them because all of these are spilled over, and then maybe 2 or 3 days into the sprint or into the next sprint, developers are done with the little developmental work that was left. QA has a lot more to test, coupled with what they are still developing, right? So when we had this retrospective, the QA said it's a lot of pressure on them. It's teamwork, right? We cannot just focus on, oh, developers are feeling pressured. How about the QAs? So the question I asked was, QA, how comfortable are you, or what is the maximum or amount of time you need to test stories? So they said if they could get the stories to us 2 to 3 days to the end of the sprint, then we are good, right? And that is a shared understanding among the team. So it's not like you are just going to impose. I had this
Yeah.
conversation during retrospective. Let them share their thoughts. Let us have that conversation, because at the end of the day, it's not just about developers, it's about the QAs, because we all know that the ratio of developers is to QA is always more. You can
Mhm.
have like
Yep.
4 developers, 1 QA.
Yep.
So let's take into consideration the QA. So we don't have a lot of test cases pile up for the QA and they are not able to get the work done. So again, what we do is let's encourage to split the stories, right? Unless otherwise. If we can split it, let's split it so that we can be able to, get the developmental part done and the QA can test, except it's something that cannot be splitted. So I ask over and over, are we sure it cannot be splitted? If it cannot be splitted, then we can have it like that. And we can also have developers swarm, right? So there's different strategies that I've used for my team. Moving forward, we had a lot of these. So what we did was we'll have one person on the team that we do not give work to that spring. Well, because we have bugs coming in. So again, however you play it with your team, just look for a common ground that works for the team. So for us, we have this person that when we have like 8 user story pointers entry into the spring that cannot be splitted, we swarm. So we let 2 people swarm on that. And if we have a bug coming in, they will handle the bug because they are swarming. When a bug comes in, one of them can hop on the bug and the other one continues the developmental work on the large story. So that way we have everybody occupied some at some point during the sprint, right? So again, it's shared understanding and also working with management, because when I joined the team, it seems their manager was like, oh, how many stories are you completing? So it was more or less, if I swam with somebody, how do I calculate how much I was able to do for a sprint? So I also had a conversation with the manager on the one-on-one. I said, what do you think about swarming? Right. Also by the manager or the dev managers in is going to make it a little bit easier for you to be able to implement those. So those are some of the ways that I go. But again, overall, it's about the team. Have the conversation with the team.
Hmm.
Yeah, thanks, Coachella and Kat. I think that's what we talked about it earlier in the session, that it also, when we're doing estimation, it's not just about the guys that are doing the development. We factor in the testers as well,
Hmm.
QA, whichever one, how they call it, right? It is critical so that they have enough time to be able to conduct their test, because actually she's saying the ratio is always, it's always gonna be right, 4 to 1 or 5 to 2, whichever one. I've been in an environment where I think it was 5 to 2. The 2 of us were the testers, even though we're BA, but we're doing testing, right? So if they getting that much work done, it could keep piling. You don't have enough, right? But I think it's something you got to look into. Go deep within your team. Try to create maybe doing your retro. Try to get a good understanding. They also, I mean, are they taking enough? Are they taking more than they can handle? Right? Are they is what they take, is it clear? Do they have clarity in what they're supposed in terms of the deliverable? Is there clarity in what we're supposed to deliver? Because there are other factors might take place rather than just what they telling you or what you think is happening. You might want to, do a little bit, dive into and have the conversation with them. Like they indicated, it's a team effort, right? It's not, get get them to understand it's a team effort. Get them to understand management is also paying attention to it. It's not just what you're seeing. You may not see or know that they checking this stuff. They do check it. They may not be approaching you immediately as the scrum master what's going on, but they can observe it to a point where they will send somebody to come down. What's going on with this team, right? So
Hmm.
always be mindful and don't go. Don't try to be too aggressive when you approach them. Try to make it a more professional conversation. Hey, team, we understand we're doing a lot of carryover. We have to be mindful. Management, we may not realize it, but management have access to, because they have super user access, so they know
Mm-hmm.
exactly what's going on in the entire organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
Try to bring it in a form where they can understand that, yeah, this is going on, and how you guys can better, resolve that issue. Hope it helps out. So we're wrapping up 10 minutes. So Rosalind has, we saw your question, we're not skipping it. So what is the expectation for dev with regards to work, and how much point they are expected to complete every sprint? I think dev manager or lead can, after decision with management. Okay, this, so basically the point of it is, what is the expectation for developer with regards to how much work can they complete complete within a given sprint? Like how many story point?
Hmm. We don't have.
That's a great question. For my teams, we have a baseline of 5. So on our agreement, we have 5 user story points per developer per sprint, no matter the expertise is written in caps. And that was only taken into consideration because what we're working on was quite challenging, and it was a new project. So whenever we estimated, we always realized that there was something else that we discovered in the course of development, right? So we decided that let's do 5 story points per developer per sprint until the team becomes comfortable with that piece of work and we are sure of what to expect, then we can increase. But that is what we have at the moment, 5. And if you have time off, right? If you're out most of the spring or half of the spring, you can only take like 3 user story points worth of work. Again, it will vary from organization to organization. I'm giving my environment. Some environments you have them taking up to 8, but for mine, we have a baseline of 5 user story points per developer per sprint until we get ourselves familiarized with this project and we are able to know what to expect. Because most of the times we have those 5 story pointers end up being an 8, right? So if we are taking in an 8 story pointer, there's very high chances that we'll spill it over. So let's do 5. If it ends up being an 8, we still have bandwidth to be able to do the um, um, extra work that we realize in the course of the development. So again, it depends on the team, it depends on the organization. Have the conversation with your team. When I got in there, I asked them, do we have baseline of how many user story points a developer is supposed to take? And they actually had that documented. So you can always review. If they don't, you can have the conversation with the team and set that for the time being.
Okay, thank you, Coachella. I think Rosalind was saying this was just a contribution. Thank you. But this goes to everybody out there, what Coachella just says, right? There's a baseline in every organization. For mostly, this, if we're just throwing it out there now. For a newer team, it's mostly saying the default should be 8 story point, because you know each other's strength yet, weaknesses. But having a normal, I think, will be for most. If I won't say for most, but normally it will say 8, right? Even in ours, it's the same thing they do. Mainly, every developer or everyone should have eight story point they should get on it. But again, it's an agile environment. One thing is said, another thing is done. So long as it will fit, if it works, don't break it. As the saying going, right? If it works, don't break it. Yeah, but some are doing 6. Right, the logic behind it 6, and the remaining 2 hours you spending on meetings and whatnot that's going on around the organization. But mostly baseline will be 8, especially for a new team. Again, organizations are different. You may go see something else different. Just try
Yeah.
to understand it and don't jump to change it as much as you can. All right, we're about 5 minutes now. Any addition with regards to estimation or questions you have, Coachella, Coach Cat? Any addition? One last final word you want to give out to acting Scrum Masters that are watching us live or aspiring Scrum Master that are looking to get into the field.
Chinchilla, you wanna go? I'm going to go first.
So with estimation with my teams, I always like to emphasize it's just an estimate, right? Because I know sometimes teams are afraid to say, oh, what if we say it's 8 story pointer and we cannot get it done? So I usually tell them it's an estimate, right? I like to
Mm-hmm.
use the example if I have 2 glasses of water and one is half glass and I have a full glass. And I ask them, if I hold these 2 glasses of water and I ask you, in relation to this one on my right and my left, which one is more? They can easily tell me, oh, the one on your right is more because it's a full glass, right? That is relative estimation. They are relating the full glass to what? The half glass of,
Wow.
but they are not telling me accurately how much the one on my hand weighs,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's not supposed to be accurate. It's okay if we are able to start and we find out that, oh, there was something more. It's just an estimate. We learn and then we adjust,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I always tell them that. I'm not asking you to give me exactly how much does the glass of water on my right hand weighs, because by looking at it, you will not tell me unless you take it and put it on the scale.
Mm-hmm.
And that taking it and putting it on the scale is when you start doing the developmental work, when you are in it. Then you can find out that, oh, this was actually more than I thought. And what do we get from there? We learn and then we improve moving forward. So I always assure them when we're about to estimate. So most of the time they have that fear of commitment and all of that. Or what if it's not, what we estimate? So again, it's just an estimate. Make sure that you help your team feel comfortable about it. Appreciate them even if we do not complete our spring goals. And the goal is, how do we learn from this moving forward?
Yep. Coach, I mute. All right. So I always use this example too with my teams. Like, let's say we have like different sporting events. Let's say we have running, walking, gymnastic. It's gonna take different efforts, right? And you cannot estimate like, oh, it's gonna take this, it's gonna take that. So we always try to. I always tell them during the sprint there'll be many unknowns, especially with my new team because it's an entirely new product. So because sometimes they used to beat themselves a lot, like, oh, we are refining stories in the middle of the sprint. I told them it's okay because it's a new product and there are many unknowns. So when this happens, we should not beat ourselves. We should just take this as a learning opportunity, or just yes, a learning opportunity. And as we move forward, we'll get better. And it's been many sprints down the line before we used to refine like in the middle of the sprint, we will need to go over five, not like let's say we took 20 stories into the sprint. In the middle of the sprint, we'll be refining like 15 of those stories. But now we've gotten to a point where we were refining maybe just 2 stories in the middle of the sprint, or clarifying the ACs and the stories like to just two in the middle of the sprint. So I'm like, I told you guys we'll get better with time. So if they make mistakes, don't they should not be themselves. Just tell them, oh, okay, team, this is a learning opportunity during retro. Oh, what did you learn from this opportunity? And then you document that and put on either your conference page or on your Jira or ADO board. So always, like Coach Ella said, always appreciate the team, even when they don't meet their sprint goals, even when they make mistakes. Always encourage team members to speak and write with empathy, and always try to put themselves in other team members' shoe before they say anything. And sometimes people, okay, what lessons did we learn? I always tell them, okay, if you give one like negative lesson, you need to give five positive lessons for one negative lesson you give. So now it has made them to refine their thoughts and the way they write. They'll be like, oh, now before they'll be like, oh, we were refining a lot of stories in the middle of the sprint. Now they'll be like, we are doing great now instead of refining. So that's made them to change the way they talk. So don't beat yourself and don't beat your team. I've just encouraged them and see every mistake as a learning opportunity. embrace the growth mindset, and that's going to help you a lot. And for those who upcoming Scrum Masters, you got this. Continue to learn, improve on yourself, and just learn. And if you need any support, we have the best community. You can reach out to us and join our community, because we have like a lot of hands-on experience and we do a lot of projects just to bring you up to speed, because the market out there is so tough. But you can do it.
Yeah, Coach K, just real quick, I had a developer ask me on my team and said, are story points standardized throughout the organization? The answer is no. We do not
No.
compare two teams, right?
Mm-mm.
You guys don't have the same level of expertise. You guys are not working on the same
The
types of
same
projects.
product. Yes.
Your projects are not the complication level or the um, complexity of your projects are not the same. And somebody who has more experience, which is why we have senior, dev, junior, and all of that. Somebody with more experience will estimate a user story of 2, and somebody else with less experience will estimate that same user story of 5.
Yeah, it happens on
So
my
we
team.
do not
Yep.
compare, it's not standardized. Let's customize it to the expertise and the complexity of our team and
Team.
depending on what we are also working on. So I just wanted to, throw that out there.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you very much. Fortunately, we've come to an end of and the session. Olawale, I think you can reach out. The information is below. Sorry, we can't. We're wrapping up now, but you can reach out. See the information below, or email, and we'll do our best to respond and give you the best help as we can. In closing, as both Coach Ella and Coach Kat say, you're the captain of the ship, or you're the pilot of the plane. Take control of it. You know, keep calm, keep the calm, keep the peace. Let everybody know and let everybody have fun. It's not just about work; it's about fun, right? We work, we have fun, no pressure.
Coach Ella.
You know, no pressure, and yeah, just
It's all about the
enjoy
fun.
the
It's all about the
environment.
fun.
Yeah,
Yep.
it is fun, which is what I'm trying to get into my team. That it's not just work.
Yeah.
Morning I come, I try to spice them up with some whatever crazy conversation or quote for the day. Today I give them a. I went on YouTube. No, sorry, not YouTube. I did a nice what is a animation just to congratulate them, right, for what job well done during the sprint. So mostly they don't get this often, right? So in closing, thank you very much for joining us today. See you all next week or next time. Again, the information is below. You can reach us at any time. We'll do the best we can to help you in the agile journey. Take care, stay blessed, and have fun.
And thank you, everybody, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you,